All right, I think we're ready to get started here. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'm Richard Battersby. I'm the Assistant Director for City of Oakland Public Works, and under my purview, of course, is fleet. But to make things interesting, I also have facilities, as well as sewer and storm drain. So a day for me, I never know if I'm going to be dealing with toilets or transmissions. My background is I come from fleet. Ever since I got out of the United States Army, I didn't know what fleet was, although I worked in the motor pool for the military. I ended up getting a job working for Airborne Express. They were advertising for a fleet manager. And I looked at the job description. I said, well, that sounds kind of like what I was doing in the Army. So that's how I discovered fleet back in the late 90s. Not too long after that, I was actually looking to deploy some compressed natural gas vans for Airborne Express. If you haven't heard of Airborne Express, it's not surprising. At one point, we were the third largest overnight shipper behind UPS and FedEx, and then we were bought out by DHL in the early 2000s. But at the time, we were running routes throughout the Bay Area, and everyone, they look at alternative fuels and they automatically think, well, you're looking to lower your carbon footprint, you're looking to reduce emissions, you're looking to save the environment. What I was looking to do was put my trucks in the HOV lane with a single occupant. Because in order to use the HOV lane in the Bay Area, at the time it was two, and then it went up to three. So we would have to double up on resources just to make runs in the morning and the evening. We had to reconcile all the misdirects. So we would go to SFO, Oakland Airport to SFO and back. And as you can imagine, if you can't use the HOV lanes, that's a lot of wasted time. So like I've said earlier, with private industry, alternative fuels are dollars and cents decisions. And in this case, the alternative fuel came along with the HOV, the high occupancy vehicle for if you're not from California, the carpool lane. So in order to do that, Clean Cities had a rebate program for the CNG vans. And I thought that was a pretty cool organization. They helped me get grants. It was super easy. And after that, they asked me if I wanted to join. I said, sure. And a couple years later, 2001 or 2002, the coordinator at the time asked me, hey, Richard, would you like to be co-coordinator? And so let me caution you, if anyone ever asks you to be co-anything, just understand they're asking you to take over the position, because that's what happened. So I've been with Clean Cities for 2003. I've managed fleets in California for Airborne Express, the state of California, Contra Costa County, UC Davis, and now it's City of Oakland. So this is mainly an electrification venue. We're talking about alternative fuels. I think we got a great presentation from RTA on fleet operations. If we want to delve into that, if you have any questions, you can ask me. I might have the answer, I might not. If I don't know the answer, I'll make one up. But here we go. So the electrification in the city of Oakland started in 2014, and we didn't really have a plan. It was all opportunity. Opportunities present. So so I guess my advice here is, if you don't have a specific plan, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It makes you more flexible. It makes you nimble. Once you have a plan, you start committing to goals and milestones. If your plan is too aggressive, you can be perceived as not being successful. Let's say your goal was to deploy 20 electric vehicles over the next 2 years, and you deploy 5. Well, that doesn't necessarily look good. So if you create plans, being vague is fine. From my perspective, is being fine. We didn't have a goal, but an opportunity came up through a grant to field electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations, which I knew a little bit about because I did that back when I worked for the state in the early 2000s. So we took advantage of the grant funding, got us 4 Nissan Leafs, got us 6 charge point ports, which was 3 charge point dual port chargers. And that's where we started. So then the question is, where do you go next? And that particular function kind of came about at the same time. The charger installations were taking place while the vehicles were on order. So by the time the vehicles arrived, the chargers were in the ground. That's great. If anyone ever says that electric vehicles and electric vehicle chargers is a chicken and the egg situation, they're wrong. It's not. Put your chargers in first. And I'm telling you this because anyone can operate an electric vehicle charger without an electric vehicle, but I challenge you to operate an electric vehicle without a charger. So let's eliminate that chicken versus the egg dilemma. Right now, currently, we've got, I think, about 130 plug-in vehicles because they're coming in regularly. We got 87 charging ports, and we also have a couple of DC fast chargers. We have deployed 4 of the Beam solar units. There's Paired Power is on site today too, as well. Kim Springer. They offer similar products. It's basically a grid-independent electric vehicle charging system tied to solar and battery storage. And I will expect my commission check at the end of the conference. If you don't know, Oakland's in the Bay Area of California, eighth largest city in California. We got about 450,000 residents, 54 square miles. So needless to say, we don't have great utilization metrics when we look at the miles. So we typically track hours in service or trips. Trips is kind of the most important criteria because we can have parking enforcement out there in a vehicle all day long, and maybe they only go 10 or 15 miles, but they're running their routes, they're writing tickets, they're doing exactly what they need to do. If you run a traditional fleet utilization report, and it's the same thing with construction inspectors, those guys and gals go out, they may do 4, 6, 8 sites a day, but once they get there, they're going to be there for maybe an hour or 2 hours. So they have multiple trips throughout the day, but they may only go 5 or 10 miles. So again, just something to keep in the back of your mind when you talk about utilization. It's got to be organization specific. And of course, we have a light duty and a heavy duty shop. We have a body shop where we do panel replacement, and we do body work, but we no longer paint. It's kind of an oddity. If you don't have one and you think you want one, no, you don't. Stay away from it. Our fleet we claim 1,900 assets, but that's all the miscellaneous stuff that probably doesn't have wheels or a license plate on it. We got about 1,600 on-road vehicles. There's our breakdown with alternative fuels. You could see we've got battery electric, plug-in hybrid, renewable natural gas is a big thing for us for carbon footprint. We have our own on-site CNG station. It's very easy to make an arrangement where you become renewable natural gas. It actually lowers the cost of your natural gas, at least in California. I got to remember, I'm talking, how many people are here from California? How many from Nevada? How many people from California wish they were from Nevada? We have this, I didn't put it on, oh yeah, I did. I have it on the slide. I'll talk about it later. Renewable diesel's our thing. That really helped us out. We actually have a couple of representatives from Western States Petroleum. They're the big renewable diesel distributor up in our area. They can answer any questions you have and perhaps even hook you up with a local supplier. I think I already talked about it enough in the plenary session, but really it's a miracle fuel if you run diesel vehicles. If you can get renewable diesel, even if you have to pay a premium, I suggest that you do. And of course, hydrogen. We've got 4 hydrogen vehicles. They're Toyota Mirais. They're actually really great. Oh, question? You know how much fuel I do, but not off the top of my head. I'm gonna say it's $1 or $2 a gallon. At times it was up to $5 a gallon. Something like that. That's correct. Yeah, a few years back, I did a quick analysis because I had access to the data on how much it costs to refine a gallon of renewable diesel. And I took a snapshot and also all the credits that were available. And at that time in California, renewable diesel refiner could give the fuel away and they would make a slight profit. So that's why renewable diesel took off so massively. And you're going to see the same thing with sustainable aviation fuel, which is basically renewable diesel for planes. It's because the incentives were there. When you started seeing major petroleum, and this is not part of my presentation, when you started seeing major petroleum refiners, Phillips 66, Gulf, whatever they're called, Chevron, Exxon, getting into renewable diesel, again, it's like the private industry and alternative fuels. they're not doing it because they want to save the environment. They are multi-billion-dollar corporations making great profit on petroleum, but they could make more on renewable diesel. So we saw a shift in, I think it was 2015 when we started with renewable diesel. There was less than, I want to say, 500,000 gallon production capacity. The majority of it was in Louisiana, believe it or not. And we had a small facility down in Paramount, Southern California. It might have been 600,000 gallons. Now, I don't even know what the tens of millions of gallons that are being produced domestically. At that time, we were importing. All the renewable diesel was coming in for overseas. Why? Because of that low carbon fuel standard. Folks figured out they could make money. Neste was the biggest producer at the time. They're based in Finland, and they make a great product, and they're a great business partner. But the fact of the matter is, getting back to Clean Cities' mission, the energy, economic, and environmental security of our nation. And economic security comes about when you're producing it locally. So that means we have our U.S.-based refineries where we're putting United States citizens to work. We're creating a product here in the United States. And I'm not an isolationist, but I like to see what's good for the neighborhood, right? If it's good for Oakland, good for California, good for the United States, I'm all for it. So at one point, we had the largest renewable diesel refinery probably for about 6 or 8 months in Martinez, California, and then it just exploded across the United States. I've got a whole presentation on renewable diesel for later. But getting back to hydrogen, as great as that fuel is and as great as those cars are, we're paying $37 a kilogram. And it's crazy. When hydrogen came out, it was $13 or $14 a kilogram. And the mantra at that time was, well, when we get it down to $6 or $7 a kilogram, then we'll have some economic parity. Instead, the price has shot up. So if you're looking at dipping your toe in the hydrogen water, take a look at the fuel availability and pricing. I'm not being negative about hydrogen. I love it, and I'd love to do more. But when we got into it, we had some great incentives through California had a clean vehicle rebate program, and the state of California General Services obtained some great pricing. And I think we were paying about, I don't know, $40,000 for the Toyota Mirai, which seems like it's high, but it came with a $15,000 fuel card. So you include the value of that, we were paying about $25,000 for a Toyota Mirai. I couldn't say no. But is it a sustainable solution long term? Not at this point. Zero emission or better. I talked a little bit about carbon intensities in the plenary session. The main point is, it seems like the big advantage or big opportunity, if you really want to lower your carbon footprint and you have the ability to run natural gas, look at renewable natural gas. Renewables are essentially, you can create renewable fuel from a virgin product. You can grow crops. You can grow soybeans for biodiesel or renewable diesel, but you can also make it from stuff that nobody wants, like grease out of the sewer system, like used cooking oil, like wood debris. That's one of the big emerging areas for renewable diesel production is, I think they call it woody mass. It's basically the stuff that's left over from making timber. So if we figure out a way that we can make fuel and have that co-located, that's why I'm so bullish on renewable diesel in Oregon and Washington, because of the timber industry. If you could start processing the leftovers into that fuel locally without having to ship it, that's like the ideal situation. And then you start getting into the circular economy models, which I talked about earlier, which I firmly believe in. If you have an opportunity to take advantage of one, I suggest you do. We only use about 750,000 gallons, maybe 800,000 a year. Not very much compared to some of the bigger fleets. And I put it on the pie chart just to show you, before renewable diesel, that blue represents our low carbon or renewable fuel use in the city of Oakland. After renewable diesel, we got up to almost 50%. So that was an incredible overnight shift. And it makes you look like a superhero, because you can work for years to do something like this using the other fuels. And I'm not a renewable diesel salesman, by the way. It just made a lot of sense. Where we've been successful, I'd say the light duty electrification. We actually were able to deploy workplace charging It's kind of interesting, the beam and the paired power options when you use that for electric vehicle charging. I mean, you have the cost of the infrastructure, yes, but the actual cost of the electricity that you're putting into the vehicles is zero because it's coming from the sun. So if you have some sort of government requirement or um, a corporation requirement to recover the cost, don't provide free fueling to employees. Well, once you throw a beam or paired power out there, your fuel cost is zero other than the infrastructure. So, not a big deal. We've also been extensively partnering with Sacramento Clean Cities and also the city of Fairfield to deploy plug in hybrid and battery electric technician training. We're fielding the vehicles in large numbers, and the dealership support, especially at first, was lacking. So we're willing to spend the time and money to invest our technicians. And every time we do it, every time we bring Ford out, we offer it to the other local municipalities so they can send a couple of their technicians as well. I think it's a fantastic model. All of us do not have to figure out how to fund this. If one of us can do it, and Clean Cities, East Bay Clean Cities, I'm able to underwrite a lot of these activities. But if one of us can do it and all of us can benefit from it, I think that's the way to move forward as a fleet industry. Um, We've done our fleet electrification assessments and plans. The one thing I asked them specifically to leave out was milestones. But like I said, I don't like numbers because if you don't meet your numbers, you're perceived as a failure. We just know what the end result is going to be. We don't put a specific date on it. That gives us flexibility to take advantage of financial opportunities when grants are available. And if the grants aren't available, to just put it on pause for a minute and wait. I think being nimble, deploying alternative fuel vehicles is a big advantage. We are hiring a consultant. Actually, we got it grant funded. We were sitting around and the opportunity presented through the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. We're working with ICF to mesh our light duty and heavy duty fleet electrification plans and maybe include a police patrol electrification plan because we got a couple of Mach-E's out there that are working pretty well, and we see other police departments successfully deploying battery electric. I wasn't real comfortable with it at first, and I'll tell you, if the chief is comfortable with it, I am comfortable with it. Another word of advice: never force any equipment on any individual that has a uniform and a badge. And because if you do that, you will probably fail. They will come up with all kinds of reasons under the sun for that not to be successful. Do the hard work up front. Do that collaboration. We've got our fire department was a little bit skeptical when we went to renewable diesel. They said, we're not real comfortable in this fuel. I said, fine, let's try a demo. And by the way, we'd been running renewable diesel about a year at the time, putting the stuff in stationary generators, including our 911 call center, with absolutely no problems. But fire department wasn't real comfortable. So I said, let's do a pilot. And they agreed to it. They were also fueling at our regular fuel site. So they'd been using renewable diesel without really knowing it. Each one of our fire stations has a small fuel supply, not all of them, but most of them have a small fuel supply. And some of the bigger firehouses actually have like 2,000 and 5,000 gallon fuel tanks. When they were fueling at our site, they were using renewable diesel and didn't know it. No problems. So anyway, yeah, we didn't have dedicated funding early on. We were flexible. When the grant opportunities came around, we leveraged them. And now currently we got a whole bunch of grants lined up. Our biggest challenge now is bringing the match funding for those grant awards. At the time we applied for the grants, we were okay. Now the city of Oakland is something like $187 million deficit. First thing that happens, anybody know when budget shortfall, first thing that goes away? Replacement funding. Exactly. So we're operating in a zero replacement funding environment for the last 2 years. The challenges, anybody from California will tell you, the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule requires you for medium and heavy duty to buy battery electric or hydrogen. There just isn't the product out there. We're seeing some now, but the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule implemented January 1st, 2024. There wasn't anything available. We don't have enough staff to manage a wide scale electrification rollout. Managing fuel is relatively simple, even though counting our firehouses, we got 40 something fuel sites. When you start deploying electric vehicle chargers, multiply that times 10. it quickly becomes a full-time job. So if you're going to adopt electrification, I suggest you get like at least an analyst or perhaps a manager to assign to that. It's really too much to add to existing staff unless you're way overstaffed already. And I doubt that that's the case. And let's see. I think I covered all that stuff. And oh, by the way, when you're doing electrification and there's a state regulation like this advanced clean fleet rule, it says upcoming regulation. It's not upcoming. They already put it out there. Um, it's imposed on everyone. So everyone at the same time is looking to upgrade their electrical capacity at their charging location, which is typically a corporation yard or some other depot location. Everybody's doing it at the same time. So the wait time for PG&E to approve a request and start issuing permits, it's like 18 to 24 months now. Before it was like 6 to 8 months. So when you start talking about these projects and milestones, if I had committed to a date, I'd be up a creek because I can't even get PG&E to approve it for a year and a half or 2 years. So anyway, enough said about that. But just talked about the additional electricity. Unfortunately, I don't think they make those little Moby units at the bottom in the middle. Those are pretty cool. It's actually a self-powered level 2 EV charging unit that you can like take around in the parking lot. So it's kind of ideal for unoccupied battery electric vehicles because when we first started installing chargers, they were pretty well oversubscribed. They were always full. So this gave us the ability to move around the parking lot and put a little charge on some units. And if push came to shove, if you got a ramp, you could wheel this in the back of a pickup truck and take it out to a stranded asset where somebody ran that sucker down to zero. Anybody had that happen?
Those are water rechargeable ammeter.
Yep. Yep, rechargeable. Anyone have a battery electric vehicle go down to zero? Yeah, AAA can't bring them a gallon of electricity, but AAA does have mobile rescue units. So, you know, the market and the industry is addressing those challenges. Potential solutions to the shortage of battery or shortage of electricity. There are some on-site turnkey units. You're going to see a bunch of them out here today. That's why I really like this event that's being put on. And I need to thank Dave and Fleet Pros. I forgot to acknowledge you guys at the introduction. I just take it for granted. But I mean, I used to belong to you guys years ago when it was the Rocky Mountain Fleet Managers Association. Kind of got busy. One of my favorite organizations to belong to. If you do not belong to Fleet Pros, I suggest you do. There are some other opportunities in California locally, but I mean, if you're in this area, I can't recommend another organization more highly. The other thing I talked about briefly was electric vehicle charging hubs, and that's where third parties are coming in and they're just installing charging infrastructure. They don't have any vehicles or anything like that. So just imagine that Tesla model where you see them putting in all these superchargers. This is another entity, and that's all they do. Now, how they make money selling electricity, I don't have a clue. I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but I guess it's possible. Um, Mobile EV charging, and again, there are some transportable solutions. They could be trailer mounted, they could be powered, that give you the ability. Where I'm really excited about this is like for off-road and construction sites. If you have the challenge now, if you have battery electric vehicles in your fleet, in your courtyard, do not worry about investing in some sort of a transportable or mobile charging unit. You'll see some out here today. Because and the fear is, well, we need it now, but once we get our electric service upgraded, once we have our charging, we won't need that anymore. There's going to be a huge market, at least in California, from construction companies, because there will always be work going on where there's inadequate electricity to support charging for the off-road battery electric equipment that California is also requiring. So you won't have an albatross. That unit that you buy, you will be able to either redeploy it internally or you'll be able to sell it. So, sorry, I think I'm getting on a soapbox here. Integrated solutions. Oops. That was battery, electric, and solar. And the other thing I want to just touch on briefly, when you talk about bidirectional charging, vehicle to grid or vehicle to everything, that basically just allows your vehicle to augment your stationary facility electrical supply. So if you are installing charging infrastructure, I would suggest that you spec something that's V2G capable. This is going to be very big in the future. I I do predict it in my extra credit project. I think in the industry, especially for larger vehicles like school buses and some of our class probably 6 to 8 stuff, overspecking the battery pack, because even though you don't need that range or that capacity, that electricity you can put into that large battery pack when it's at its lowest cost. If you've got it plugged in when midday, when the utility wants to get you with those peak charges, you can use that electricity. You can actually lower your electrical bills. That's where I see the future. The way
Be to charge other free. You're thinking
up to use to your building as well.
that augment your power off the facility.
Correct. Peak shaving. That's it exactly. Now, the city of Oakland utility bill, I think for electricity is something like $8 million a year. I just showed you what my fuel costs or fuel capacity is. It's 750,000 gallons. We're not spending $8 million on fuel. We spend $8 million on electricity. If we can figure out a way to use vehicles to lower that, and a lot of that electricity cost is when you hit the peak charge rates, when you're drawing so much electricity, and the threshold is different, I think, depending on your application. But there's a line, and when you cross that, PG&E jacks our rate up, and it's like 20 or 25%, or it might even be 50%. So anyway, that's the way to future-proof, buy chargers with vehicle to grid. And with that, do we have any questions? Oh, in the back.
I don't know. I can see what.
Richard, what do you see this kind of with ACF, right? You've got a pull from CARB, you got to get here. You've got a pull back to your city council. You can't have any money to get there. What do you see that interaction look like? Well, are you just denied purchases at some point? What does that look like, Berkeley, like yours? I talk to a lot of places and they go, we don't know what enforcement is going to look like. The city council, like, give us some money. And Park says, your milestone 2027, and you're not even close yet. What is that
Sort of drama and drama.
Nobody's been more critical of CARB and the advanced clean fleet rule but me. But I think they were unintentionally brilliant by giving us the option where 50% of our new vehicle acquisitions must be zero emission. If we're not buying vehicles, 50% of zero is zero. So it's a way around the regulation that's working for us now. I honestly believe CARB's going to go back to the drawing board. And I've got many friends at CARB and offline CARB staff that work with Advanced Clean Fleet Rule. They will tell you, you know what, you're right, we agree with you, but this is what the board wants to do. The future, I think, is ARB has to come back to the drawing board, and they need to open up Advanced Clean Fleet Rule. There should have always been a natural gas exception, especially when it's renewable natural gas. And there should be a transition period for renewable diesel powered vehicles. I mean, it's just common sense. So that's the way I see it. Other fleets that don't have money, I mean, if they're worried about Advanced Clean Fleet Rule compliance, hopefully they're not in the milestone track. If you
A lot of customers who chose milestone as an emergency measure. 24, right?
Yep, big problem.
50%, they chose milestone and they're really going.
Yep, are they supposed to, is that 100% by 2037 or is it 2020?
It's at 10% for that first group. But they really, that group 2 is what really gets a lot of clicks. They all have
pickups and straight trucks and non-specialty vehicles that all of a sudden 10% by 2070 is
16 months away.
Yeah, we just got lucky. And again, I just generally don't like the milestone approach because I don't know what my future funding is going to be. And if you tell me half of my acquisitions are zero emission, I think I can work with that. So stay away from milestones. Yes, sir.
You said you had 120 plug-in.
Mm.
How many?
We have 87 ports that we own and operate, but also at some of the city-owned parking lots and structures that we manage, and we have vehicles stationed there like our parking enforcement. We have augmentation charging there too. Like we've got 30-something DC fast charger units where our parking enforcement vehicles are. And then we also have options to charge offsite, which we don't really see. One of the things that it was kind of a pleasant outcome because we're a small geographical region, our vehicles don't go that far. We've got a lot of Chevy Bolts with 200-mile, 230-mile range, whatever it is. They don't have to charge every night. So it's like playing a game of Tetris. We have not got to the situation where we're locked out. We have a vehicle that says, hey, I can't figure out how to charge. So I guess that was a long-winded way of saying you don't necessarily have to have a dedicated charging port for every one of your plug-in vehicles. And some of those plug-in vehicles are plug-in hybrids. We use those as a transition. So out of that 120, well, we probably have about 90 or something dedicated battery electric, and the rest are plug-in hybrid. Time. Well, with that, thank you very much. I'm going to introduce Ron Worth here.